Okay, welcome to another video. This one's going to be slightly different. This is going to be on the Vray6, which can create these kind of fire effects, water effects in simulations. If you like this video, I'll continue doing it, or if not, this might be a one-off and I'll just implement it now and again in some other videos. But let me know in the comments if you actually want to see more of these type of videos. So in here we have this fire effect, which I think looks really good. I'm going to go over how we create this, and at the end of the video you should be able to create something very similar. So let's jump straight in. So going over the scene, it's a simple enough room, just a box. One room separated in here with some glass panels and some windows. Then we have some chairs and a carpet. Mostly we won't see in the shot. And in here I have a Forest Pro object creating the pebbled stones. And in here I have some wood logs. And these wood logs are found in Megascans. You can find them yourselves. And then I just stack them on top of each other. One thing you need to know when you're creating these simulations, you want your scale here in the system units, system setup, to represent what you want to create. So if you're looking for a massive explosion, you might want to change this to kilometers because it needs a gigantic explosion, so you need big scene units. For my 1 centimeters here and display units meters, it's absolutely fine for a fire display. Just something you need to know before you get started. That's just something you need to know because if you look here, these figures might be slightly different to what you're using depending on the unit system you're using. Now the very first thing is we're going to select the objects that we want to burn. So this is the logs. So I'm going to select all my logs here. We're going to go to the preset, click this, and it's going to create everything we need for the very beginning. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to go over to modify and we need to go into simulation. So just the default settings, I'm going to hit start and then come back when that's finished. If you want to speed things up, you can change this timeline to something like smaller, but I'm just going to do all 100 frames and I'll come back to you now. So one thing I'm doing is I'm switching from Vray CPU to GPU just because GPU computes it a lot faster and I'll be able to see real-time feedback quite quickly. So off the bat, this is the fire we get and it looks pretty good. Like if you're in a distance, you look fine, but there's some things like the fire is too consistent around here and it's too strong up the top. So let's change a few settings, which I eventually got from tweaking a few things that I thought looked quite well. The first thing I'm going to change is in grid. And that's basically the space that I want the simulation to take place in. So in the X, I'm going to start moving this down and you can see that box gets bigger and smaller. So I'm going to make sure it's inside that area. I'm going to go into the Y, move this just where I need it. And then the Z, I'm going to increase that to a height that I like. I don't want to be too high. And then that way down here, I can set up adaptive grid. I'm just going to hit disabled because we don't need that anymore. The next one to go into is dynamics, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to 0.18. I'm going to go into my smoke surface, change this to 0.3, and then my large scale change to 1. And then I'm going to change the dynamics to 0.5, the quality to 50 here, sorry, to 20, and then the multipass we're going to change to 5. So that's the last settings in this Phoenix FD Fire. Now we need to move on to the source. So that's the source objects you have here. And then you want to go to general. And I want to change the outgoing velocity to 0.003. Then the temperature I'm going to change to about 4,000. Now I want to add in some noise masks into this outgoing velocity and into the temperature. So now we're going to create some simple noise maps. So right click, go to maps, general, and go to noise. Here we are. We're just going to change a few things. We're going to make that a bit bigger so you can see what's going on. The first thing is I don't want 100% black. So we're going to go to something like a gray value. Something like that. And then we want to change this object XYZ to explicit map channel. Once we do that, we want to change this to 2. Change this to 0.2. Then we want to go to the size and make this a lot smaller. Something like 0.45. Then the high, I don't want that high. And down to the low, probably something around 0.3. So now you can see we're getting a smoky look, but I want to make sure I change this to fractal. So then we're getting this kind of stronger look, but still not exactly what I want. So levels, I'm going to increase to about 6. And then we're getting that kind of stronger look. The last thing I want to do is go down to enable color map. I'm going to go here, right click, Bezier corner, and we're just going to kind of bring these blacks a tiny bit up. And now we get that kind of smoky look that we want. We're going to grab this and drag this into our no map here. Say okay. And we'll do the exact same to the temperature. The last thing we need to do before we run the simulation is we need to go to our turbulence at the very bottom, and the only thing I'm going to change is this to 3. And that's all I need to do. So now I'm going to run a simulation again. To run your simulation again, just head back to simulation and hit start. Okay, now that that simulation's done, we can now see we're getting that more of a triangle kind of look, that kind of flame in the fireplace you're more likely to see. If we were to compare this to the other one, which is on the same, oh, if I save it first, and then I compare it, you can see we're getting a much better look to it. Obviously, you can go for this look if you want. This is just a look I decided that I like better, because you get some more flickering and it just gets that more triangle look that I usually see in a fire. Now, the next thing we need to do is go on to the look and feel of this in the rendering. So in simulations like this, it's actually separate. You can have this simulation done and then the rendering is separate. So we can go in here, we can go to volumetric options and we can change how it looks without having to resimulate it at all. So let's jump into these settings and let's change the entire look without having to worry about simulation again and again. So when I was mentioning earlier that you can change stuff without resimulation, well, this is what you can do in the render settings over here. So if I open up fire here, I can then go in here and change, say, the multiplier of the fire to something like 25 and hit enter. And once I've done that, you can see the fire is coming a lot brighter and we don't need to resim. So it's great and effective and we can quickly change these to our liking. Now I've done settings that I like and you don't have to do it my way, but this is what I'm going to set in my settings. So you can follow along if you want. So the settings I'm going to use are fire multiplier, I set to 20, and then I'm going to drop this down to multiply opacity by texture, or opacity, whichever way you want to say it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this down to 0. Now, it means like it's not going to look 100% real, but I like the look that it looks at 0 because now what I'm going to do is, you see how the fire is around that wood? Well, I want to change that. So what I'm going to do is in this map, I'm going to click here and I'm going to type in Vray distance. And I'm going to get the distance texture. Double click that and we have our map. So let's open it up here, drag it in. If it lets me, drag it in. There we go, click an instance. And in here, I'm going to change this down a lot, something like 0.4 for now, maybe actually 0.04. We'll do something very small. And then down here, we're going to add in all our wooden objects. So over here, I have my objects. I'm going to grab all these and hit plus. And hopefully it does it for all of them. No, it doesn't, so I have to add them in one at a time. So I'll cut back to when I have them all added in. So now I've added in all those and our new render now looks like this. Now it's a bit too strong in the colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to simplify these colors right now. So we're going to go in here and change colors that I want. So now I'm going to change the temperature of the fire. So what I'm going to do is delete a bunch of these by hitting backspace once they're selected. Okay, it's not letting me. Delete, select this, delete, select this one and delete. And now we're going to change this to a color I already know, which I know up here, which is 0.017, 1 and 0.906 and click OK. And then the color of this is going to be 0.076, 0.745 and 1 as well. Click OK. So here I just want to double check this, 906, that is, and those are the two colors I want to work with. I also want to change the max temperature here. So I'm going to bring this down to about just over 2. And I want this one to go roughly where it is, maybe a tiny bit lower. Now I need to change these a bit. I want one less here. And I want to just adjust these now. So the first point I want to change to, and I have an exact value in here that I know from earlier. So 1225.12. And then this one, I want it to be minus 0.0215. Make sure I don't do two minuses. Then the top one, I want to change to 1249. The next one, no, it doesn't let me do tab. 0.1086. And then this one, I want to change to 1278, 0.31. And then this one, I want to be minus 0.024. And let me just hit expand to see if we like, and that's exactly how I want it. Happy out. And now let's hit render and see what we have. So once I hit render, you can really see the difference to what we had previously. So I'm going to save this for now. And then I'm going to go A and B. And you can see we've gotten rid of those bright reds and really bright yellows, I guess. And we get something more calmer, something more nice, nicer, but something that looks 10 times better than that. That looks like it's about to explode. This one looks a bit more subtle. And that's pretty much the fire effect. Now there's a few other things I want to add, but those are more post-process effects. Okay, so I've hit render, and now what we're going to do is I'm going to change some things. So I've added in a light mix. If you don't have that, you go RGB and then you click light mix. If you don't see these or your settings, and it says, you might have a button here that says I add light mix. You could have to hit that and then hit render again, unfortunately. Now, the great thing I like about these simulations, if you want to call it that, the Phoenix V-Ray pack, is the way it interacts with the scene. So how it's lit up this edge with the same color, it's lit up the edge of this chair with that kind of color from that fire, and also all around the bottom, which makes sense. That's something you'd want it to do. But I can also just immediately switch this off, and I can switch off the environment as well. And then we don't have that at all. So if I go to the edge of that, see it's completely gone. I can switch that back on and off. So it's really powerful. I can also switch this and this off, and all of a sudden we don't have the fire at all. So very powerful. If say you had a client, oh, I'd like to see a fire, actually you know what, switch it off completely. You don't need to hit render again. So I'm going to switch these back on. And the first thing I'm going to do is I add this sharpen and blur, and I'm going to click calculate blur, and that just gives me a bit more sharpness. It depends up to you. You might want that kind of blurry fire look, but I'm going to add a bit of sharpness to it. The next thing I did was I added a bit of lens effects, and it gives that kind of bloom. So if I click that, we get this kind of bloom effect. Now you could say that's a bit strong, you can bring it down. But if I switch this on and off, you'll see that kind of bloom with the fire, which is great. And then again, in exposure, I didn't change this too much. I just brought this up a tiny bit and added a bit more contrast. And in the white balance, this is up to you. So like, I'm looking for that kind of warm look, so I'm not going to push this too high because it'd make it a bit too ridiculous. But it's up to you what you like. I go around 6200 and I'm happy with that. And the very last thing is I added a bit of curves to bring the midtones and the shadows up and down. And just like that, with the simple preset that V-Ray give you, you get this pretty good, amazing fire effect. Now you could do it in Photoshop if you really wanted to, but you wouldn't get the lighting the same way in Photoshop. Or you could use an animated texture in 3ds Max as well and get that going. But I think this is actually relatively quick and very powerful. So if you would like to see more of these videos, you could do stuff like boiling water, you can do wind effects and stuff like that. So any bit of smoke as well. So if you want to know how to do these effects, I can continue doing that. And if not, I can go on to other videos, which I'll be doing anyway. So I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any other questions about it, just put in the comments and subscribe if you're not. So thanks a lot for watching.